one of the moves the Eagles made. We're going to get a little insight on one of the moves the Eagles made, plus their new-look secondary. Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, played in the league for 10 years with the Broncos and the Jets. He's coached, and now he's a host on 104.3 The Fan in Denver. He's a great follow on Twitter, Nick Ferguson _25, and he's here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Nick, welcome back, bud. How are you?
I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, there you are, Nick. What's going on, my man?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. So we got a lot to discuss here in Philly because you played safety. They got a whole new look in the secondary. One of the guy, Will Parks, you know pretty well. So I'm interested first to get your take. I don't know, is he a 16-game starter right now, or is he just a nice kind of fill-in special teams guy?
Well, I mean, he is very versatile. He can play special teams if you need him to. I feel as though Will has done enough here in Denver to deserve a shot as a starter. And then, looking at the current roster as it's constructed in Philly, I mean, there's a lot of young guys in that secondary. Rodney McLeod and Darius Slay, who's been recently traded for, those are the two elder statesmen in that secondary. Everyone else, we're talking about 3, 4 years, 2 years in the league as far as the level of experience. So, the Philly, they get a great player, a Swiss Army knife, if you will, and he can come in and he can compete. He's definitely going to challenge those guys for a starting role.
Right. You gave us a little bit more hope than I think most people had when that signing was made. One thing I want to ask you about, well, I mean, it was a guy who did not get a lot of playing time with Denver, and I know they were a pretty good defense out there, but Malcolm Jenkins is out. Let me ask you, Nick Ferguson, you've been in NFL locker rooms, and when you have a presence like Malcolm Jenkins, when that guy is no longer there, what kind of void are the Eagles trying to fill without a guy like Malcolm Jenkins?
Well, I mean, it's a huge void because you talk about a guy who was very vocal both on and off the field, a guy who was given the task of lining guys up, being the quarterback of that secondary, leading the meeting room. So now it's incumbent on those other young guys in the room to step up. But this is where a guy, like Darius Slay can definitely step up. This is where Will Parks, believe it or not, can definitely step up. And I know people look at Will and say, well, that's not one of these blockbuster, acquisitions, and you only sign him to a one-year deal, but don't take anything away from him. Like I said, I mean, here's a guy who was drafted in the 6th round. He played safety, corner, and dime linebacker for the Denver Broncos, and the only reason why he didn't really crack the starting lineup on an everyday basis is because you had Kareem Jackson, who was a drafted player. You had Justin Simmons, who was a higher draft pick than, Will Parks. So I don't want anyone to dismiss and say, well, there's nothing to be excited about this pick. Just know that when you look at, what Schwartz is going to actually get as a player, here's a guy who's a do-everything guy. And then you need to have a Swiss Army knife in today's NFL because long gone are those days of just having that end blocking tight end. You have those guys who are tight ends by title alone, but they're just big wide receivers. And Will Parks has shown that he can go out and cover some of these guys. And let's not take it away from his level of toughness and physicality. When you look at what Philly is, just as a fan base, as a city, it speaks, toughness in your face. And this is what this kid brings to the organization.
I like it. Nick Ferguson, 104.3 in Denver. What about, a guy like Jalen Mills, who has been being asked to be moved to kind of safety. Now, a lot of people, this happens all the time, Nick. You've probably dealt with this in your career where guys say, he's a corner. He's got to play safety. He doesn't have the speed. Mills has always kind of been a guy that Jim Schwartz trusts, but he's given up some big plays, but he's smart. He knows the system, and Schwartz trusts him. Do you like him getting moved into the safety spot? You think that's going to be a big move for him?
Well, it does. I mean, it extends his career, but the fact that, he was maybe a mediocre guy from a corner standpoint, now you step into the safety role where your skill set now shows up big time because, once again, we're talking about matching up on those big tight end hybrid type of wide receivers, and this is where, he's going to excel. Now, here's the only question that I have because when you're playing in a Schwartz defense, or any defense for that matter, you have to be able to tackle in open space. That's where he's going to be challenging. That's where he definitely has to improve as a safety, being able to get guys lined up and being able to show that you can tackle in space on a consistent basis.
What do you think about Sidney Jones? Right now we're obviously looking at Darius Slay playing the one side, and we don't know what's going to happen on the other outside corner spot, but we do know that Sidney Jones was drafted really high. He had the injury history, and he made some good plays last year in certain situations. I don't know if the Eagles are going to try and draft another corner in this year's draft, which I would expect them to do so, but do you think Sidney Jones has what it takes to maybe solidify that spot if he gets the opportunity to do so?
Well, see, that's the biggest thing right there. It's about opportunity. I mean, when you get the opportunity, you have the presence to show the coaches what you can do as a corner. So Sidney, he has to continue to build on his skill set and playing within that division. It's all about moving your feet and being able to match up from the man-to-man standpoint. If he can do that, then he'll be able to challenge for that position. If not, every team is always looking to get better, and if there's some better options out in the draft, then the Philadelphia Eagles would definitely do that. But it's incumbent upon him going into his third year. How am I going to get better? How can I develop within this defense? He's been with Philly for a while, so he should know the ins and outs of that defense. And if he wants to protect his job, he has to come in ready to compete. If not, they're going to give that job off to someone else.
Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, spent 10 years in the league. Now with 104.3 The Fan in Denver. What do you know about Slay? Because it seems that he is a guy that people feel that the Eagles finally – I mean, they have been a mess back there, Nick. Terrible in that there's many games that the Eagles blow with the secondary, and you'll tweet at us and be like, what's going on in that secondary? Is Slay fixing their problems that they've had? You've watched their problems, Darby, Mills, Sidney Jones, Russell Douglas. They're all nice guys, good players, but none of them is a standout player. Do they finally have a standout?
Absolutely. I mean, looking at Slay's career, most people really don't know who he is and know his body of work because he was playing in Detroit. And when you play in Detroit, they don't win a lot of games, so they think as though the defense is giving up a lot of points, then that's a reflection on you and your ability to cover in the back end. But he's one of the top-rated corners. If I would dare to say that he's probably one of the top 5 corners in the league that no one's really got a chance to see, but now going to Philly, playing within that division, Amari Cooper's in that division, will get a chance to see Darius Slay at his finest. And he's going to help the pass rush because pass rush and coverage are married together. And once again, playing in NFC East, you face some really good wide receivers. And finally, Philly fans can actually, rest their minds that they have a corner in Darius Slay. But it doesn't really stop there. We just finished talking about it. Can Sidney Jones be that guy? Can Avonte Maddox be that guy? If they can't be that guy, there's a bevy of young corners coming out in this upcoming 2020 draft that Schwartz and Philly can actually pluck out of the draft and insert in that lineup. But, Darius Slay, finally, the Eagles got a good corner. And this could be the sign of something changing in Philly soon.
Well, they got younger. They got faster. But when you lose Malcolm Jenkins, are they better? Do you like what Jim Schwartz has to work with your guy Parks, Slay, moving Mills to safety, bringing back Rodney McLeod? You watched them a lot last year. I know you do. And when you look at them, what they have now, do you feel like, you know what, Schwartz has a better group to work with than he did a year ago, or losing Jenkins too big of a loss?
Well, I don't want to say losing Jenkins is going to be a huge loss. I mean, you miss his leadership in the back end, but a lot of these guys are familiar with Schwartz of defense. And you're looking at the direction of a lot of teams in the NFL, they're going younger. So they're thinking long-term. Can we get this group of guys to play together and communicate? And if they can do that, then I can see Philly being one of maybe the top 15 defensive units in the NFL. But that's all going to depend on can they get these guys to work together. Anyone would tell you when you talk about secondary guys, communication is very important, right? And that's the part that Malcolm Jenkins actually supplied. But if these guys can get on the same page, man, things can turn around for you guys quickly.
All right, we're talking with Nick Ferguson, 10-year NFL safety. I just want to get your take on, obviously, the biggest story in the NFL is Tom Brady leaving the Patriots. You've been covering an AFC team with the Broncos since, your time playing has, expired, and it's been New England in that AFC for 20 years. Is this a move that you would endorse if you were Tom Brady's confidant and say, Tom, go to Tampa, this is smart, or would you have advised him to stay in New England?
Well, no, I think this was a great move for Tom. I mean, the one team that I thought that Tom was going to jump to was the Chargers. I mean, they are already on both sides of the ball with the weapons that they have. And looking at what Tom had to deal with last season, a lot of young receivers, and you could constantly see Tom yelling on the television screen about guys not converting their routes, running the wrong routes. So, I mean, it seemed like because Tom has been with the Patriots for an extended period of time that was the best place. I mean, sometimes you reach a point in your career where it's time to move on. But the Bucs were never. I don't know who out there who thought that the Bucs were a landing spot for Tom Brady, but when you look at what Bruce Arians has assembled down there in Tampa, man, I mean, Tom can walk right in, and this could be a team that goes in and win the NFC of South. Knowing as though Jameis Winston threw 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions last year, this defense was still playing at a high level. They scored 29 points on offense with Jameis Winston turning the ball over at a high clip. You insert Tom Brady in it, and it instantly changes the trajectory of what that offense could be. So I like the move. It's very exciting. Now the NFC South has become the division to watch because think about all the quarterbacks in that division. Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater, and Tom Brady. I mean, that's must-see TV every single Sunday. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this, by the way, having the NFL have this little period of crazy, wild free agency has been a great release to what's going on in the world. Nick Ferguson, 10-year NFL safety, 104.3, the Fan in Denver. It has been wild stuff, though, all the different moves. Melvin Gordon's out there, right? Did he just sign with you guys?
Yeah, he just did, and I had a little tirade on Friday because – as though I love the move, I was thinking about what it means for Philip Lindsay, who's now going to go from RB1 to RB2. And here's a guy who came in the league as an undrafted free agent, went to the Pro Bowl his first year, and he came back in the second year, rushed for 1,000 yards again. And I just look at it as a level of disrespect that's being shown to Philip Lindsay. And I know this theory in the NFL that, hey, listen, the running backs, they fall off the turnip truck, and you can find another one out there. And looking at what happened with the Rams and Todd Gurley, that continues to diminish the running back position. And I'm like, man, you can't do that to this kid. He's making $660,000 in his final year. You're going to sign another guy from outside the building and pencil him in as a day one starter and not even have an open competition? To me, whether, being a coach or a former player, you just don't do that to a guy who's shown that he can come into your building and outplay his draft status. I don't like
Nick Ferguson. Yeah, 104.3 The Fan. I thought that story was kind of interesting. We were discussing here whether or not you got Miles Sanders here and you would bring in a Melvin Gordon or a Todd Gurley to kind of like compliment him. It's like, I don't know if there's enough touches for a guy of that magnitude, but hey, we'll see it all kind of map out. Interesting stuff in Denver, interesting stuff here in Philly. Nick Ferguson at @NickFerguson_25 on Twitter. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks so much, Nick.
All right, you guys take care of yourselves.
Yeah, we'll do. You do the same. And Nick Ferguson, now, he like Will Parks there, Hunter Brody. He thinks that, I looked at Parks as just kind of like a depth guy. He thinks that he has shown enough that he should be able to be in competition for the starting position.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that has to do with Jalen Mills being the other option. Like, if you had two legitimate guys there, I don't know if Will Parks would have been able to slide in as your starter. Most said he talked to a couple guys around the AFC West, and one of the things they mentioned was he is a really good backup. That's what I said. But it's not bad if people are saying they have a really good backup, you know? And one thing I hate to bring up, but it is very true in this league, injuries. Injuries. And say something happens at cornerback. Well, maybe you could put Mills at corner. Then you could slide Will Parks in at safety. Or something happens to the safeties. Well, then you'll be able to have Will Parks play there. It's just with the injuries, it's never bad to have somebody like Will Parks who can squeeze in and play that role if need be for a certain amount of time.